Hello students, welcome back. In the last session, we have discussed classes and object-oriented programming. In that, we have discussed abstract data types in Python, then defining a class and also creating an object in Python. With example program, we have discussed this in the last session. In today's session, we will discuss constructors in Python. So constructors are usually used to initialize the variables in the class. So let's start with constructors in Python. In the last session, we have studied how a class is defined in Python and also how the members in the class are defined. So members in the class are the data variables and functions. Python also allows us to define some special type of functions which are defined by using double underscore. So class functions that begin with double underscore are called special functions as they have special meaning. So we can define some functions in Python with double underscore, and these functions are said to be special function because these functions have special meaning. And one particular of interest is double underscore init double underscore, or the function is init function. So this is one of the special functions which is available in Python. This special function gets called whenever a new object of that class is instantiated. So whenever we create a new object of a class, the init function is called in Python. This type of function is called constructor in object-oriented programming. We normally use it to initialize all the variables. Now in Python, init function is used as a constructor because this function is called whenever we instantiate an object. Okay, let's see an example how we can declare this init function. So we have a class here, the class employee. Then you can see here the init function has been defined here. The keyword def space, this is double underscore, remember, not a single underscore, double underscore init, again double underscore, and we have parameter list. The first parameter, it is always self. Then we have two more parameters to the init function. The parameters are name and id. Inside the init function, we have defined two variables, self.id and self.name, and the variables which are defined inside the init are instance variable. Remember, the variables which you define inside the class in Python are said to be class variables, whereas variables which you initialize inside the init are said to be instance variable. So id and name are instance variable which belongs to the object of a class, and self.id is assigned with a value id which is received in the function. Self.name, it is assigned with value of variable name which is received in the init function. Okay, then we have one more function in the employee, def display. Def display, the display function, it is not a special function because This function do not begin with double underscore, but in case of init it begins with double underscore, so this is a special function. Okay, display function, again it takes one argument, that is self, and from this display function we are simply printing self.id and self.name. Okay, so we are simply printing the values of variable id and name here. Okay, so this is the class employee, which contains two functions, init and display. Init a special function, display one more function. Okay, then outside the class we are trying to create an object of employee. Here you can see emp1 is equals to employee, and we are passing values John and 101. Now as I've said, init, it is called whenever we instantiate an object, or whenever we create an object of a class, init is called. So we are here instantiating the object emp1, and we are passing the values here John and 101. So from this particular point it calls the init function, and to the init function we are passing values John and 101. As you can see in the init function, it is taking 3 arguments, but we are passing 2 arguments. As I have said, whenever we call, the first argument is always the object name. So by default the first argument is considered as emp1. So even though we are not passing emp1 as argument, it is considered that emp1 is passed as a first argument. So we are passing John 101, the first argument, it is emp1. So self will have emp1, and name, that will have a value John, and id is 101. Then inside the init we are assigning self, again represents emp1 I said. So emp1.id is equals to id, that is 101, and emp1.name is equals to name, that is John. Okay, the first object is created, that is emp1, and it is having 2 data members, that is id and name. Similar way we are creating emp2 object by passing values David and 101. Again it will call init, and it will store id 102 and name David, and those belongs to emp2. Okay, then we have called emp1.display. Whenever we say emp1.display, it goes to display function. So you can see no argument is passed. Then to in the receiving end we have self as a argument. As I have said earlier, the object name itself is passed as a first argument to the function. So emp1, it is passed as a first argument, that is stored in self, and whenever we display, when we say self, that is emp1.id, what we have stored in emp1, id was 101, so it will print 101. When we say self, that is emp1.name, it will print John. Same way, whenever I say emp2.display, again the first argument is sent, that is emp2, that will be stored in self. Whenever we say self.id, that will be emp2.id, that is 102, and emp2.name, that is David. So this is how we can include a constructor in Python. So the constructor name here, it is init. So init function, it is called whenever we create an object in the class, in the program. And we have also seen how data attributes can be declared in Python. So data attributes, you can see we have declared id and name. These are instance variables, remember, which belongs to the object of a class, not to the class itself. Okay, next is deleting attributes and object. As we can create attributes and objects Even it is possible in Python to delete attributes and object at runtime. And to delete attributes and object, the keyword which is used, it is the del statement or del keyword. Look at this example. Del emp1 dot id. Suppose in the last example where we had created id and name, and suppose if you want to delete the attribute id from the class, then we can delete it like this: del emp1. So we are deleting emp1's id, emp1 dot id. So id attribute will be removed from emp1. Same way, suppose if I want to delete the function display itself, so we can delete the function display. So del employee dot display, the function display belongs to the class, it is a member of a class, remember. So we can delete the display by calling employee, that is the class theme, dot display. In the same way, we can even delete the object itself. The object can be deleted like del emp1. The object itself will be deleted. Now let's consider one example. Let's execute an example to understand this in a better way. Okay, this is our program employee having a special method in it and two attributes id and name, and one function, that is display function, which displays the id and name. And we have created two employee objects, emp1 and emp2, and we are displaying the name and id of both the employees. If I execute this, you can see it is displaying id 101, name John, and id 102, name David. Okay, so this is how we can create object. We can call the init method, and we can even have some attribute, that is instance attribute or instance variable in the class. Now, as I've said, even we can delete the attributes. So let's say deleting an attribute id from employee2. Say I'll say emp2. Okay, the statement first, del, we have to use del space emp2 dot, what you want to delete? You want to delete an attribute id. So emp2 dot id. See, when I say emp2 dot id, it will not remove an attribute id of emp1. Both emp1 and emp2 object has one attribute id attribute, and both are having its own set of id attribute, because id and name are instance variable, I said, which belongs to the object, and every object will have separate copy of the instance variable. So whenever I delete the id attribute of emp2, that will not harm the id attribute of emp1. Okay, so I am deleting emp2's id attribute. Let us execute it again and verify the output. Now you can see it is still printing id of emp1, that is 101, and name is John. But when it is trying to print the id of emp2, it is getting an error. You can read the error: employee instance has no attribute id. That means there is no attribute id for emp2, and because we have deleted it, we have deleted id of emp2. That is the reason it is displaying an error message. So we can delete an attribute like this, and it is also possible to delete a function as well. Say if I want to delete the function display itself. If I want to delete a display function, I have to say del Again, I cannot say emp1 or emp2 dot display, because display, it is not an attribute of an object. Display, it is an attribute of a class. That is the reason we have to use a class name while deleting display. I cannot delete a function which belongs to an object. I can only delete an attribute. So display is an attribute of a class employee. So employee dot display. Okay, so I'm deleting del employee dot display. I'll just remove this first statement and I'll save it. Let us execute this. Now you can again see it is displaying an error message. What error message it is displaying now? Look at the error. Press back, most recent call, and at the end you can see employee instance has no attribute display, and it has displayed this error because we have deleted display from the employee. And when we try to call emp1.display, it is giving us this error because display has been removed from the class, and it can be removed by using this del statement. Okay, this is how we can remove a function from a class. Now let us see how to remove an object. So I'll say del emp2. So I'm trying to remove an object now. So it is del emp2. So object emp2 will be removed, and if I try to access emp2 after that, it should display an error message. So let us execute it. Okay, now you can see here the first ID 101 and name John, it has printed properly without any problem because that exists, emp1 exists and it is printing. But when I try to access emp2, it is giving an error, name emp2 is not defined, and that is because emp2 we have deleted it. Okay, so this is how we can declare constructor in Python class, and also we can define some instance variable, and we have also studied here how we can remove attributes in Python. Okay, that's it for today's session. We will stop here. Thank you.